Good evening. I'm Dr. Fred Rouse, the Real Money Doctor, and it's currently just a few minutes before 7 o'clock on Friday, the 26th of June. And I wanted to touch base today on today's daily events that affect the way you get, protect, and enjoy your money, your life, and your retirement. Well, the question for today is, are you in the maze of life? And we'll get to that in just a few minutes. And the way we start every day since early March, mid-March when I started doing these, was to touch base on the number of COVID cases to see just what's going on. Because again, the COVID situation is the main driver that's been affecting everything and everyone for at least the first half of this year so far. So right now, there are 2,400,000 cases. That's up about 83,000 cases from when we spoke last on Wednesday. I didn't touch base on the number of cases yesterday, excuse me, because I had a few activities to do. However, again, since Wednesday, we've picked up 83,000 cases. So that's a bit of a jump. The deaths right now are 124,000, almost 125. So another 3,000 people have died since I spoke with the direct number on Wednesday. New York State has the highest number of cases so far to date, 391,000 cases. They've picked up basically 1,500 cases or so since Wednesday. Their deaths right now are at 31,338. So that's 38 or 81, 81 people have died since Wednesday when we spoke with the detailed numbers. So that's, roughly 40 or so. Not great if you're one of the 40, but for a state, for counting, they've made some major improvements. California is taking the number 2 spot. Their numbers right now are 201,000. That's 8,000 up new cases from Wednesday. Their death totals are basically at 5,800 right now. So they've picked up another 230 cases. 230 people have died since Wednesday. New Jersey's got the number 3 spot, followed by Illinois. And then you've got Texas, Florida, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania is at number 8, Georgia's number 9, and Michigan is number 10. Again, Texas and Florida and Georgia have moved up this past week. They're not happy about it, neither are any of the inhabitants of those states. Things have happened, and we'll get to those in just a couple minutes. Now, the case total is jumping. The death total is pretty much double what it was just 2 months ago. And it's predicted to hit 180,000 people could die before October. That's what they're actually predicting right now. 180,000 people from January to the beginning of October. That's what the current projections are. There's still no treatment. There is still no treatment. Here we are 6 months into this. There is no treatment. Dexamethasone is an old-time steroid. It's been around for years and basically dirt cheap because it's been around so long. And that looks good, okay, if you're seriously ill, actually on oxygen or on a ventilator. They've had a number of good, solid studies now that shows that makes an improvement in the outcome. There's still no vaccine. And I really wouldn't expect one until sometime next year at the earliest. I'd say the middle of the year this time, maybe. Okay, and even when that comes out, that's not going to be a foolproof situation. They're still going to be making improvements on that as it goes. They're not going to know how long that vaccine is actually good for, but we'll see what happens with that. Now, if you haven't gotten the idea yet, okay, you might as well just settle in. This is going to be here for a while. Okay. It's not going away anytime soon. It's just not going to happen. Right now, dozens of states this past week saw their worst day in coronavirus cases and deaths to date. Utah, Missouri, Montana, Wyoming, Alabama, and Alaska are among the states that on Thursday experienced their worst days since the start of the pandemic. Health departments typically announce the new cases a day after they collect the data. So they have one full day that can be collected. But not now. The numbers are just so high. Alabama on Thursday added 1,100 cases Okay, 5 more deaths right now. Their count stands at 33,000 cases total for the state. 896 deaths. Again, this is one of the states that were basically untouched for quite a while. Again, New York got slammed big time. New England states got slammed big time. New Jersey got slammed big time. Again, everybody coming in. You had California get hit with the China people. The East Coast got hit, New York and New Jersey, the people coming from Europe. And they went absolutely crazy trying to contain this thing. And it wasn't all that long ago. Doctors and nurses were dying left and right. Bodies were stacked up in refrigeration trucks outside of the hospitals because they had no space for the bodies. That's pretty much under control at this point in time, and New York is relatively happy with things. But that first wave was projected to hit sometime down in the future in other states. It's there now. Alaska also reported its worst day yet, okay, on Thursday, adding 45 cases to its count. The state now has a total of 971 cases reported and 10 deaths. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot until you're actually there. And there's not tons of people in Alaska to begin with. Rather sparse state. But again, Alaska, they're not right next door to you. They got some distance from everything. And they have 971 cases and 10 people have died. Oklahoma, Texas, South Carolina, they have experienced their worst day on Wednesday. Kansas took its worst day in more than a month on Wednesday as well. Oklahoma, where President Trump held his in-person rally last week, saw its worst day in coronavirus cases on Wednesday, adding another 481 cases. The state now has a total of 2,000 cases, 2,300 actually, confirmed cases, and 65 reported deaths. And you got to remember that the president's advance team, okay, 8 of them right now, 4 of them at least were Secret Service that I can believe, okay, have tested positive or in isolation right now because of exposure. Now, Texas saw its highest one-day spike on Wednesday. They added another 6,500 cases to its count. As a result, the state, which was one of the first to reopen, ordered some of its bars and outdoor recreational businesses to close again today on Friday. South Carolina health officials reported another 1,284 cases and 10 deaths on Friday today, bringing their total number of cases confirmed to 28,962, and their total deaths right now up just under 700. Arizona, California, Georgia, and Louisiana experienced their worst days on Tuesday. California added another 6,400 cases, and another 76 people died on Tuesday. The state reported 91 and 82 deaths on Wednesday and Thursday, respectively. But fewer than 6,000 new cases on those days. As of Friday, California right now has a total of 201,000 cases and 5,800 deaths. Arizona, where Trump held his campaign rally this past week, 3,600 cases reported on Tuesday, meaning it's the worst day that state's ever had. As of Friday, the state reported 63,297 cases and 1,495 deaths. So things are happening. People didn't think it was going to happen. They're happening. Liz Cheney, okay, serious hardcore Republican, okay, from Wyoming, okay, number 3 Republican in the House, on Friday urged people to wear a mask by tweeting a picture of her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, wearing one. Okay, so much for the mask routine here. So she wrote with a picture, Dick Cheney says, wear a mask. Okay. There is still, as of an hour ago today, okay, people still going crazy on Facebook about wearing a mask. Okay, you're one of the sheep. I'm not going to live my life in fear. All this other nonsense is unbelievable. Dick Cheney, okay, you can't get too much more Republican and conservative than that. He says to wear a mask. So people, wake up. Okay. Wear the damn mask. Okay. People keep pulling these off the wall studies out of nowhere that, well, this person died from wearing a mask. People are not dying from wearing a mask. Okay. Unless you're wrapping yourself in a plastic bag with the mask on, you're not dying from wearing a mask. They've been wearing them for years in the ORs. You wouldn't want your physician, okay, or your OR doctor to be operating on you or your family if they weren't wearing a mask. They must work. Hospitals have been using them for years. Dick Cheney finally says, wear a mask. Nick Saban did a PSA. Okay. Wear a mask. What a surprise. Now, many House Republicans have failed to wear a mask in public amid the pandemic, despite healthcare guidance that says that you should wear a mask and social distance to prevent the spread of the virus. Now, Democratic leadership issued a mandatory mask requirement last week for any House meetings in the limited enclosed spaces they have those meetings in. Like they're hearing rooms. They're not big rooms. Okay. And if you're in that room for greater than 15 minutes, they want you to wear a mask. I mean, if you're just walking through, it's one thing. But if you're there, they expect you to wear a mask. Now, despite those rules, conservative Republicans have been spotted, maskless in those hearing rooms in Capitol Hill. Now, Majority Whip James Clyburn, he said on Friday, he threatened to stop holding meetings in person if the GOP lawmakers would not comply with the House rules to wear a mask. So much for the mask situation. Today, the U.S. stocks plunged, as major COVID outbreaks forced Texas and Florida to reinstate some of its restrictions. Nobody ever thought it was ever going to happen. They're going to open and life was going to be grand. And what a surprise. It didn't happen that way. Dow Jones Industrial today fell an average of 730 points, basically 2.8%. The S&P declined 75%, or 2.4%, 75 points or 2.4%. Okay. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said the state would order bars and some outdoor recreational businesses to close and lower the operating capacities in indoor restaurants. In Florida, Department of Business and Professional Regulation suspended consumption of alcohol on premises at certain bars. Now, both states saw record increases this week in COVID cases. The markets had recovered a significant portion of their steep losses in March. One expectation that the swift and straightforward recovery from the pandemic would, change the economic downturn. Surprise! It didn't happen. Today's decline erased the remainder of the gains made in June and raised questions about the outlook for the markets for people actually trying to predict those things. I never try and predict those things, and that's not what we do. I've got a program that actually responds to market conditions. And the stock market is not one of the conditions that we have to respond to at all. But, we've done the count so far. And we've done what happened in the markets. And, well, that really takes me to what's happened from the latest in D.C. And it's always something interesting happening in D.C. Last night, the Trump administration asked the Supreme Court late on Thursday to overturn the Affordable Care Act, telling the court that the entire ACA must fall. The administration's arguments comes as hundreds of thousands of Americans have turned to the government program for health care as they've lost their jobs during the coronavirus pandemic. Now, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi responded to the brief by saying that there is no moral excuse for the Trump administration's disastrous effects to take away Americans' health care. Dismantling the ACA would leave more than 23 million people without health care plans, according to recent analysis. Nancy Pelosi said in a statement, President Trump and the Republican campaign to rip away protections and benefits of the Affordable Care Act in the middle of the coronavirus crisis is an act of unfathomable cruelty. The administration's brief was filed late last night in support of a challenge to the ACA by a coalition of Republican attorneys, following through on Trump's pledge last month to overturn President Obama's landmark, healthcare legislation. The filing came the same day that the government report showed nearly 500,000 Americans turned to the ACA in April and May amid COVID-19's economic devastation. Now, according to the report on Thursday from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, 487,000 people, Americans, took advantage of a special enrollment period on healthcare.gov after losing their healthcare plans, and likely among millions of Americans who lost their jobs during the pandemic. Now, the numbers mark a 46% increase in enrollments in April and May from 2019. Now, former Vice President Joe Biden, the presumptive Democratic nominee, said during a campaign trip in Pennsylvania on Thursday that axing the healthcare law as the nation is still reeling from the pandemic would amount to a double whammy for COVID survivors. He worried that survivors, the insured, would view COVID as a pre-existing condition, and without the ACA, would be free to actually deny survivors coverage. Biden said, and it was all over the news, those survivors, having struggled and won the fight with their lives, would have the peace of mind stolen away from them at the moment they needed it the most. They would live their lives caught in the vice between Donald Trump's twin legacies, his failure to protect the American people from the coronavirus itself, and his heartless crusade to take away health care from American families. White House spokesman Judd Deere brushed aside the concerns that disbanding Obamacare would worsen the pandemic crisis, saying in a statement, "The global pandemic does not change what Americans know. Obamacare has been an unlawful failure and further illustrates the need to focus on patient care." He added, "American people deserve a Congress to work for them on a bipartisan basis with the president to provide quality, affordable care." Now, they've been hollering, since it got passed, close to 10 years ago now. They've been hollering, repeal and replace. For 10 years, repeal and replace, all you've heard. Surprise, here we are 10 years later. They still have nothing to replace it with. Nothing. Now, oral arguments are actually scheduled for the next term in the Supreme Court. However, it's unclear if it's going to happen before the election. A decision for the case may not come until well into 2021. Now, Trump says that he wants to protect American health care coverage for Americans with pre-existing conditions, which is what the White House spokesman reiterated on Thursday night. But if you followed remotely closely, you have to be in a cave somewhere not to realize that what the president says and then what happens are totally different things, generally 180 out. This is really no exception. It really isn't. Now, the administration has not presented any plans showing how it would accomplish that. Now, the Justice Department, Thursday, in their brief, took the opposite position. In the brief that the attorney filed, Solicitor General Noel Francisco argues that all of the ACA should be struck down because one of its core provisions, the individual mandate, is unconstitutional, running the rest of the law as invalid as well. Now, Francisco argued that the individual mandate became unconstitutional when Congress reduced the penalties to zero in 2017. Without any remaining tax penalty, Francisco argued that the provision could no longer be considered a constitutional use of the Congress's taxing power, the reason the Supreme Court upheld it in a previous challenge. Now, he went on to argue that the provisions protecting Americans without pre-existing conditions or high-risk medical histories are inseparable from the individual mandate and therefore would be struck down with it. Nothing that the 217th Congress did demonstrates that it would have intended for the rest of the ACA to continue to operate in the absence of those integral positions. Now, the entire ACA must fall with the individual mandate. Now, That's what he had in his brief. Again, President Trump says, no, no problem, no problem. Here's what was actually filed, though. So once the entire thing wiped out, pre-existing conditions, they got to go too. So again, you're hearing one thing from the White House, from the president, but what gets filed with the court on paper, something totally different. You think it might affect you just a little bit? Just a guess. Now, the Washington Report reported last month that even some of Trump's administration, including Attorney General William Barr, who's been a real winner recently, has urged a less aggressive position against the ACA, fearing that advocating for its total elimination would sort of backfire against Republicans in the election. So you can see their only concern is the election. They could care less about you. Their only concern is the election. Now, the administration previously supported preserving the law's more popular provisions, such as the guaranteed coverage for those with pre-existing conditions, but adopted a more stringent stance following a ruling from a Texas federal judge gutting the entire law. The ruling by the district judge, Reed O'Connor, which reflected the position laid out by Francisco on Thursday, was put on hold as the case remains under review and now rests with the High Court. California Attorney General Xavier Becerra, who's a leading coalition of states battling to protect the ACA, said Thursday night that as more Americans die of COVID, this fight comes at a most critical time. The ACA has been a life-changing, and now throughout the pandemic, we see the need and the value it has in giving greater access to quality health care at affordable prices. Now, Becerra said that in a statement. Now is not the time to rip away our best tool to address the very real and deadly health disparities in our communities. So there you have it. They're always busy. It's been a busy week. It's been a very busy week. Okay. Cases are going up in places they didn't expect them to go up at all. Okay. People are going crazy or continue to go crazy about wearing a mask. Okay. Tons of false stuff and twisted and slanted things are being posted. I don't know that they're Russian bots, but it certainly seems that way. The things that are coming out on Facebook these days. So what's it all mean to you? What's all this nonsense actually mean to you? And that really brings me to the question of today. Are you in the maze of life? The COVID cases are still rising, followed by hospitalizations and deaths at a somewhat slower rate. Okay. If you're from a COVID hotspot state and you want to visit New York, New Jersey, or Connecticut, you're going to be in quarantine for 14 days. If you want to travel to a European Union country, you may not actually be allowed in at all. People are beginning to seriously question the use of police force and blanket immunity as more cases hit the news almost every day. Americans are starting to question the monuments and the flags of the people that were on the losing side of the Civil War. It's an actually amazing thing. Okay. We have statues that went up for the losers. Alabama may be taking down the emblem of the Confederate flag from its state flag. They just passed that in the House, in the Alabama House, I believe. They're looking to take the Confederate flag off of the state flag. Financial and racial inequality are being questioned like no time ever in the past. The stock market and Main Street, two different places, completely different places, and people are noticing. Last year, you were planning on retiring in a year or two. That seems totally out the window at this point in time. And you may be wondering why you're just not jumping up and down with joy right now. You're not feeling 100% that this is a wonderful time. It's not a wonderful time. Things are happening. Okay? And you got good reason to feel the way you do. You really do. It's really easy, basically too easy, to get wrapped up in all the events of the day and allow yourself to get whipped up into a frenzy, making you think that there's absolutely no way out. Mm-hmm. And you turn on the news and you listen to friends, and it's a problem with human nature. We try to hang out with people who think the same way we do, which means you have no outside source of information. You're in the same bubble. And you go from one hot button issue to the next, and you're just stuck in this maze. And if you want out, okay, how do you get out? You're stuck. Okay, if you're in this maze, you can't move forward with your life. There's no way. You go from one little hole to the next little hole, and you back out, and you go back again. And you turn the news on, you turn the radio on, you turn a podcast on, and you're listening to the same thing in the same bubble of information constantly. And eventually, no matter how off the wall it may be, you start to believe it. And it aggravates your soul, and you can't understand why somebody else doesn't agree with you 100%. And there you have it. Okay. Now, did you actually want to get out of that? You can. There's a really, really simple way. It's obnoxiously simple to get out of the maze. It really is. All you have to do is rise up above it and look at it from the outside. Now, why would you ever walk into a maze if you could simply walk around it? Now, most people really don't enjoy all the aggravation and constantly getting pigeonholed in the maze. It could suck up years of your life, tons of both your energy, time, and money. Do you really want to walk into a mess like that? It's much easier just to walk around the outside of it and look at it. Oh, yep, that's a mess over there. I'm not going to go over there. I can just walk right around here, no problem at all, and I can get on with my life. Because once you're stuck in the maze, you're stuck in the maze. You can't get out. Very few people get out of the maze. And you go from side to side, like a little pinball there, okay, back and forth, and you can't get out. And you're wrapped up with all the nonsense inside of it, and you're going nowhere fast. And if you're 50 plus, time keeps passing on by, and you're stuck there. Now, it's really easier than you think. It is really, really easier than you think that you can actually do something. You can get up and look outside of the maze. See how easy it is to get around it. You don't have to walk into it. Look from the outside and see how easy it is just to walk around the outside edge of it, and you're fine. Once you do, it will lift the weight of the world off your shoulders. It will give you an amazingly clear path forward in your life. It's really simple. Step back. Look at things from the outside. Focus on your life goals. Just those one or two things you want to actually accomplish in your life. Understand, if you're stuck in the maze, you're not focusing on those things. You're focusing on all the little idiot shit that's going to drive you crazy. People want to suck you into their problems. Did you ever notice whenever somebody's unhappy, they're exceptionally willing to share that with you? Exceptionally willing to share that with you. If they're happy, you don't see it very much, though. They keep that to themselves. I'm telling you right now, you could be happy. You don't have to be frustrated. Focus on those one or two big things that are important in your life. When you do that, you'll be totally surprised how quickly all the nonsense just drops away. All those petty little things that kept you stuck in a maze, sucking up your time, energy, and money. Okay, you can just walk away from those things. Okay, you can walk around the outside and just concentrate on the important things in your life. Try it. With just a little bit of practice. Just a little bit of practice. You'll feel the calm that it brings to your life and your decision making, while keeping you focused on the things that actually matter to you. Now, I'm Dr. Fred Rouse, the Real Money Doctor. My only goal is to help you get, protect, and enjoy your money, your life, and your retirement. I missed you yesterday. I did a little short thing. I just stopped in to say hi, basically. But I do appreciate you spending some time with me. I enjoy spending time with you. I look forward again to seeing you on Monday, okay, around 7 o'clock. Thank you.